The shadows grew longer. A sense of unease started to creep in. The forest, which had seemed so welcoming in the daylight, now felt oppressive, the trees closing in like a dark, suffocating blanket. John couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The drive was long, the sun high. The road stretched out before him, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the wilderness. The further he drove, the more isolated he felt, the weight of the world lifting off his shoulders, replaced by a sense of freedom and anticipation. As the pavement gave way to gravel, a sign, Black Creek Lake, 10 miles. The road became rougher, the trees denser, and the sense of isolation more profound. But John pressed on, driven by the promise of adventure and the allure of the unknown. A shiver ran down John's spine. He ignored it, pressing on. The excitement of the trip overshadowed any feelings of doubt or fear. He was determined to reach the lake, to set up camp, and to enjoy the solitude he had been craving for so long. The woods were growing darker, thicker, closing in like a fist. The once bright and welcoming forest now seemed to be closing in on him, the trees forming a dark tunnel that swallowed the light. But John, ever the adventurer, pushed forward, unaware of the true nature of the place he was about to enter. The air grew heavy, the sunlight struggling to penetrate the dense canopy. The forest seemed to close in around John, each step forward feeling like a step deeper into an endless maze. The trees, ancient and gnarled, stood like silent sentinels, their branches intertwining to form a nearly impenetrable barrier. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled his nostrils, a constant reminder of the life and death cycle playing out in the shadows. Every now and then a distant rustle would catch his ear, but when he turned to look, there was nothing there, just the oppressive, all-encompassing green. Shadows stretched like long fingers, twisting, reaching. They seemed almost alive, as if they had a mind of their own, intent on ensnaring anyone who dared to venture too close. The play of light and dark created illusions, making it hard to distinguish between reality and imagination. John couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking his every move. The forest was a living entity, and he was an intruder in its domain. John felt a prickle of unease. He rolled down the windows, hoping to escape the suffocating atmosphere. The cool air did little to calm his nerves. Instead, it carried with it the faint, almost imperceptible sounds of the forest, the creak of branches, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an unknown creature. Each sound seemed amplified in the stillness, a stark contrast to the silence that had enveloped him moments before. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the crunching gravel under his tires. The road seemed to stretch on forever, a winding path through the heart of the forest. Each turn revealed more of the same: dense trees, thick underbrush, and an ever-present sense of foreboding. The gravel road was narrow, barely wide enough for his car, and the overhanging branches scraped against the roof, adding to the eerie ambience. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was driving in circles, that the forest was playing tricks on him. No bird song, no animal calls. The forest was unnaturally quiet, as if all the creatures had fled or were hiding from some unseen threat. The absence of sound was deafening, a stark reminder of his isolation. John had always found solace in nature, but this place was different. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The silence pressed down on him, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. Just an oppressive silence that seemed to hum in his ears. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that seemed to be alive. It was as if the forest was communicating with him, telling him to leave, to turn back before it was too late. But he couldn't. He had come too far, and there was no turning back now. The path ahead was uncertain, but he had to keep moving forward. The weight of the silence was almost unbearable, a constant reminder of his solitude. He turned on the radio, desperate for any sound that wasn't the suffocating quiet of the woods. The static filled the car, a harsh, grating noise that was almost a relief. He twisted the dial, searching for a station, any station, but found nothing. Just more static. The radio was his last connection to the outside world, and it had failed him. The realization hit him hard, a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He was truly alone, static. He slammed his fist on the dashboard. The frustration and fear boiled over, and for a moment he let himself feel the full weight of his situation. The forest had swallowed him whole, and there was no escape. The static was a cruel reminder of his isolation, a constant, unchanging noise that offered no comfort. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. But the silence returned, heavier this time. The silence returned, heavier this time. He was truly alone, swallowed by the woods. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, and the forest seemed to close in around him. The trees loomed large, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The path was narrow and winding, and he had no idea where it would lead. But he had no choice. He had to keep moving forward, even if it meant venturing deeper into the unknown. The sun dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. Night was coming. The forest took on a new, even more sinister appearance in the fading light. Shadows lengthened, and the darkness seemed to grow thicker, more oppressive. John knew that he had to find a way out before nightfall, but the road ahead was long and uncertain. The forest was a maze, and he was lost within it. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared, he steeled himself for the journey ahead, knowing that the true test was yet to come. He reached the lake as twilight bled into darkness. The sky was a canvas of deep purples and blues, the last vestiges of daylight clinging to the horizon. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a reminder of the wilderness that surrounded him. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves, but the encroaching night brought with it an unsettling stillness. It was eerily still. Black water mirrored the dying light, creating an illusion of an endless abyss. The surface of the lake was so calm that it seemed like a sheet of glass, reflecting the darkening sky above. The only sound was the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the area. John set up camp, his movements jerky, his earlier confidence replaced by a gnawing anxiety. Each snap of a twig underfoot made him flinch, and the shadows cast by the setting sun seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways. He fumbled with the tent poles, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to focus on the task at hand. The feeling of being watched was growing stronger, an invisible weight pressing down on him. He built a fire, the crackling flames a small comfort in the growing darkness. Nightfall. The temperature plummeted, and the warmth of the fire was a welcome relief. The flickering light cast long shadows around the campsite, creating a small island of light in the vast sea of darkness. John sat close to the fire, its heat soothing his frayed nerves, but the sense of unease lingered. Shadows danced at the edge of the firelight, twisting into grotesque shapes. The flames seemed to take on a life of their own, creating eerie figures that moved and swayed in the periphery of his vision. John tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, but the feeling of being watched was impossible to shake. Every crackle of the fire, every rustle of leaves seemed to carry a hidden menace. The silence was shattered by a twig snapping. John froze, his heart pounding. The sound was so sudden and out of place that it sent a jolt of fear through him. He strained his ears, trying to catch any other noises, but the forest had returned to its oppressive silence. His mind raced, conjuring images of unseen predators lurking just beyond the firelight. He was no longer alone. Something was out there, watching him. The feeling was so intense that it was almost tangible, a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He scanned the darkness, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow, but he saw nothing. The forest seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. He told himself it was an animal, a deer, a raccoon. Anything to explain the noises and the feeling of being watched. But deep down, he knew that it was something more. The primal part of his brain, the part that had kept his ancestors alive in the wild, was screaming at him to run, to get away from whatever was out there. But deep down, a primal fear whispered otherwise. It was a fear that he couldn't rationalize or dismiss, a fear that gnawed at the edges of his sanity. He tried to push it away, to focus on the warmth of the fire and the safety of his camp, but it was always there, lurking in the back of his mind. The forest held its breath, the silence amplifying every rustle of leaves, every crackle of the fire. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly, each minute feeling like an eternity. John knew that he had to stay alert, to be ready for whatever might come, but the weight of the darkness and the fear was almost too much to bear. He could only hope that the dawn would bring some relief, some sense of safety, but until then he was trapped in the twilight's embrace, listening to fear's first whisper. He retreated to his tent, zipping the entrance tight. The forest came alive. Whispers slithered through the trees, too low to decipher, yet undeniably human. John lay rigid, listening. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. Two glowing orbs materialized in the woods, fixed on his tent. He stifled a gasp. The eyes blinked slowly, their gaze cold and predatory. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying it was a nightmare, but the eyes remained burning into his mind. A low growl vibrated through the air, sending shivers down John's spine. He fumbled for his flashlight, his hand shaking uncontrollably. The batteries were dead. Of course they were. He was trapped, alone with whatever lurked in the darkness. He peeked through the tent flap. The eyes were gone. Relief washed over him, fleeting and fragile. A monstrous shape shifted in the darkness beyond the trees, too large to be anything he'd ever seen. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. Then a stench, putrid like rotting flesh. John gagged, his stomach churning. This was no ordinary forest. It was a place of nightmares, where fear took on a physical form. He had to escape, but terror rooted him to the spot. He heard heavy footsteps circling his tent. Each thudding step sent a jolt of fear through him. He was being hunted. His breath hitched in his throat, each exhale a silent prayer. He had to be silent, invisible. He dared not move. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a guttural growl, closer this time, right outside his tent. The canvas ripped, claws raked the nylon. John scrambled back, his heart hammering against his ribs. He caught a glimpse of it. A hulking figure, covered in matted hair. Its eyes, glowing embers in the darkness, bore into him. Bigfoot. The legend was real, and it was here for him. He screamed, a primal scream of pure terror. He scrambled out the back of the tent, adrenaline momentarily eclipsing his fear. He ran blindly, crashing through the undergrowth, the sounds of his pursuer close behind. He didn't dare look back. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs screamed for mercy. He collapsed by a creek, gasping for breath. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees. He was alive, for now. He cautiously looked around. He was alone. He had escaped. Relief washed over him, bittersweet and short-lived. He was lost, hopelessly, terrifyingly lost. He had no idea which way he had run, and as he looked down at his torn clothes, he saw a single matted hair clinging to the fabric. He was being hunted. He was not alone. The forest held its breath, the silence of promise. The nightmare was far from over.